What's up, guys? This is Marseille, aka the Property Pastor, coming at you with another great video. Today we're going to be doing a quick video on a deal analysis. I typically get a lot of questions about how do you analyze deals, how do you know whether or not you should buy it, how do you know what you should offer. So today I want to talk a little bit about a deal that I was recently looking at. I figured it would be kind of cool just to put together the numbers for you guys, kind of walk through what that analysis would look like. So our question for today is, should I do this deal? So we're going to actually look at a deal that I analyzed recently, property I went and actually visited. And did a little bit of negotiating for and whatnot, right? But we're going to dig into that today. But before we do, I want to remind you to make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel. By doing so, you're going to get notified of new content that we're posting every single week to help you in your business and to help you in your journey. So I want to thank everybody who's tuned in today. I want to thank everybody who's subscribed so far on this amazing journey. You know, one of the things that we try to do here with the Property Pastor Show is to help you to benefit from our experiences. And some of those experiences are good, some of them are bad, but I believe that we should help one another out and build valuable content to help each other in our business. So let's go ahead and dig into this thing, right? So here you see here's actually a picture of the property itself. It was a duplex in the city of Portsmouth. And the thing I liked about this deal was this guy right over here. There was an actual detached garage rather. And you can see it's 2 stories. You got windows there. And it actually, when I saw it, I was like, ooh, I want to see that. I want to see that property because that has the potential to be another apartment, another income source that a lot of people might have overlooked, right? So this is what really made me go after this, go and analyze this deal. But again, it's a duplex. There's actually 2 sides to it. And it's a little bit unique because it didn't start out as a duplex. So we'll talk about that here in some of my concerns. But as I actually got a chance to get out and look at the unit, it became apparent that this was a single family house that was actually converted. So let's take a quick look at some of the details of the deal. All right, so this duplex was located in Portsmouth, which is about 30 minutes away from where I live here in Hampton. So this particular property would have had to been heavily managed by my property manager. It's not something that I would be spending a lot of time out going to see, but you know, it's still considered somewhat local, being that it's only 30 minutes away. So again, as I mentioned, it was a duplex, and they were asking $150,000 for this particular unit, and it was on the MLS. Now, I don't buy a ton of properties on the MLS, and one of the reasons is that everybody sees them, so there's a lot of competition. Sometimes properties are literally earmarked and sold before they even hit the MLS. So typically, when you find an MLS property, everybody's looking at it. You know, everybody's got filters set up, they've got alerts set up on their different apps and things like that, and they can see this property, you know, minutes from the time it gets posted on the MLS. So again, it was a MLS property, but one of the things I liked about it was that it had that detached garage. So my hope was that maybe there was some hidden value that other people weren't seeing that they couldn't actually realize. So I was looking at this as a potential bird deal where we would go in and estimate the rehab price for that garage and kind of factor that into our calculations, because by itself, in my particular market with where rents are going to be, it was an average at best deal with, you know, maybe a 8 to 10% cash on cash return, which is a little bit lower than where I like to be. But there were some things I liked about the property. Like I mentioned, that garage is really what drew my eye, and it spoke potential to me. So I saw there was an unfinished garage, which for me is potential for a third unit. Now that unit could be turned into like a loft. It could be almost like a 2-story house just about. And as I looked at that garage, we went out and actually saw the property. Electrical service was already in place. Now, it didn't have any plumbing, which was going to be definitely some cost to get plumbing and things like that out there. You know, permitting and city, you know, ordinances, making sure that you're aligned with the city permitting and all that kind of stuff, which is time and money. But the one benefit is that there was already electrical service. There's a panel box, place was already wired. So somebody was kind of thinking along those lines. And it was in a pretty good neighborhood. So Portsmouth has a lot of military activity there, a lot of folks in military personnel. So those typically are pretty good renters, a good income base, and good stable income coming in. So those are some of the things that I liked about the property. So I did have some concerns about the property. One of the concerns being that there was a flat rubber roof. And I don't like flat roofs, but I really don't like flat rubber roofs. So these things are leak sources. And as I looked at the property, I was like, ooh, that's going to have to be fixed out. The whole roof would have to primarily be redone. The roof itself had old 3-tab shingles on it, so I knew that was nearing the end of its useful life. But then we were going to have to actually do some framing work to basically redo the roof and to get it to drain properly so that all of the we wouldn't have water damage problems down the road. Other piece of it was that there was no central heating and air in the unit. Being that it was a single family residence at one time, they basically just had the existing ductwork, and then when they did the other unit, they had central air on one unit, and the other unit just had window units. So that was kind of a turn off for me. But then the condition of the property, when I did the walkthrough, it was definitely an older unit. The house had good bones to it, but it was definitely older, and you knew it was going to take some money to update it. The bathroom was going to have to be redone. The kitchen was going to have to be redone. Flooring, paint, all throughout the unit. It was a dated property. So it definitely had, the condition of it was not the best. Now, I typically like properties like that, but again, you really, in the BRRRR deal, in the BRRRR process, you make your money when you buy, right? So if you're spending too much to get into the property and you have to do a lot of rehab, you can't really be successful in a BRRRR type of deal. So the other piece is that, like I mentioned, that this was a single family house that was converted into a duplex. And when that happens, sometimes you question the workmanship, the quality of the work, the fact that they put the flat roof on there. That was a real turnoff to me in terms of just trying to tie everything in. You want things to be tied in so that they drain properly, so that they're kind of built for the long haul. And I really got the feel as I walked through this property, as I looked around, that it was not really built for the long haul. The windows were old. They were not vinyl windows. The exterior was just kind of run down. And then the property was just an older property. Now, I buy a lot of older houses, but in buying those older houses, I know I'm going to run into higher maintenance costs. I know I'm going to have different things with the plumbing systems. I know that, insulation is not going to be as good. So I know I'm going to have, so I typically budget for higher maintenance costs with the older property. But based on the price point of $150,000, this was a bit of a turnoff. So I didn't have a lot of wiggle room to be able to add value and force appreciation on this particular property. And then the other piece of it was that there was an existing tenant in one of the units. So one side was vacant and the other side had an existing tenant. Now, I do buy properties with existing tenants and basically try to convert them and train them to the way we like to do things in our company, our policies and procedures. But there was an existing tenant in place, and once I started talking to the realtor, it sounded like that particular tenant, their lease situation wasn't the best. They weren't really paying much money for it. So I knew that when I inherited that tenant, it was going to be some issues with that as well. And then the other piece of it was that this was a new market for me out of my area. So again, I could get there in 30 minutes, but it was a new market for me. So being, if I'm going to step into a new market, I want to make sure that I'm minimizing my risk. So for me, those are just some concerns with the distance that I had to get to if I was going to do a BRRRR rehab. And I had to go over there and meet with contractors and things like that, on a weekly basis or whatever. That could be a big time hog and not as much reward based on the risk that I was taking. So, and then the other piece of it, and this is one thing that I really don't like when I see in multifamily, is that the units were not individually metered. So in other words, there was one common power meter, one common water meter. And what happens with those scenarios is a lot of times that the landlord ends up paying the utilities. And you can do things like try to split them up between the tenants. I've got a few units where I do that, and I just say, here's what the bill is usually. Your portion is this, and your portion is that. Sometimes the tenants, they argue about, well, they use more of this. It's very difficult to sort that kind of thing out. So I really didn't like that the units were not individually metered. And again, there's some things you can do to kind of separate those and measure them so you can split the bill up at the end of the month. But that's just another step that just kind of was a concern for me. But the big thing of it is really the numbers, right? So there's nothing wrong with taking on headache if the numbers make sense. And one of the things about doing BRRRR deals or just investing in general is that you want to solve problems. So you want to find things that other folks don't want to touch, and then you can fix them within your skill set and your toolbox and profit greatly. So really it's about the numbers. So yes, I had concerns, but the big question was, do the numbers make sense? So let's take a quick look at what the numbers are. So I estimated my expenses were going to be about $1,934 a month, which, is kind of high. And that's going to include, the monthly stuff and also the rehab. So we'll dig into that here in a second. And this is basically after I've completed the BRRRR, after I've put a loan on the property and all that kind of stuff. So I estimated my mortgage, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance were going to be about $1,314 a month. I put in $220 for property management. You'll see why. It's just 10% of the income. Vacancies, I always plan for vacancy, so I usually plan for about a 5% vacancy at 110 a month. And then the utilities. Remember, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that was common, so I just estimated about $150 a month. So I figured that at least one of those utilities I wasn't going to have to pay, but by the time I do, electric, I didn't plan on paying electric. We were going to figure out how to split that up. But the water, right? I figured that I was going to have to pay for the water. And then the repairs, I put $150 a month, being that it was an older property. And then for CapEx, if the roof needs to be replaced, which with this property probably would be, leaks and things like that. If I opted not to replace the roof, that kind of stuff, I just put $100 in for CapEx. So I actually estimated, in order to fix that, basically to redo the roof, and to essentially reframe it so that I could put shingles on it and things would tie in together properly and drain properly. That was going to be about 10 grand, about 10 to 15 grand, and then I estimated about 65 grand for the rehab itself. So on the income side, and here's where, if you've got high expenses but you have much higher income, then that's okay. But really for me, I thought my income was only going to be about $2,200 a month when it was all said and done. So basically the first unit, I thought I could get about 700. Second unit, another 7, just kind of made that easy math for myself. But then for the garage apartment, we were conservative and estimated about 800. Now, granted, we might have been able to pull another $100 a month, but really our cash flow was only going to be $156. Now, for me, to put that much work into a rehab, to put that much work into upgrading a property, to only get $156, was really not gonna do it for me. So for me, the all-in price after purchase, and then after the rehab, it was going to be $210K. Now, granted, we would not be paying that the full purchase price of $150, right? We would be utilizing leverage for that. But in the course of doing our ARV calculations and doing our BRRRR calculations, we take the full purchase price into account. So the ARV on this property, I estimated it to be about $230K with the unit and the finished garage next door. So $230K compared to the all-in price of $210 only gives me 91%. So the max that we want is 75%. And the reason we want to be 75% is because our bank is only going to refinance that much. So if we're going to do a BRRRR deal, right, we want to get our capital back out. That's the beauty of BRRRR, right? So if you're just going to get if you're going to be at 100% or whatever, you're going to still have out-of-pocket money into the deal. Now, if I'm at 80%, that's not necessarily bad, because at that point, I've just spent a little bit of money. It's still less than 20% down. But for this particular property, I felt like it was just too much to be worth my time and energy and effort. So the only way we can make the deal work, and this is where you run into it, you say, okay, do you just walk away from the deal? Do you go back and renegotiate, right? And it really just depends on how motivated your seller is. So if you ask, as we ask, how can we make the deal work? Like I said, we got to pay 75% of the purchase price plus the repairs. That cannot exceed 75%. If it does exceed 75%, then basically we've left money into the deal. Not always a bad thing, but in leaving money, bringing money to the table, you can't reuse that capital, right? You've got your cash flow has got to rebuild that whatever you spent or whatever you put down over time, right? So so what we did in that event was that we countered at 100. We put a low ball bid at 105, and honestly, I think it was like 108 was where we would hit that 75% mark. So it wasn't a lot of wiggle room here. So I went back at 105 just to see if they were even remotely interested. And then what they responded back was basically they countered at 140 just to consider the deal. So they said, if you can offer at 140, we will consider the deal, which I was like, yeah, no deal. So for me, it wasn't enough to make the deal work. But the thing about it, and you can analyze, but I do like the 75% of ARV rule because it allows me to do really quick math. And I can just say, okay, here's my purchase price. Here's what I estimate my repairs are. Am I at 75%? There's a lot of different rules out there. There's a 1% rule, the 2% rule. In BRRRRs, a lot of times use the 75%. Sometimes flippers use the 70%. People who flip houses use the 70% rule. Kind of the same deal. But on the Burr side it's 75, so you get a little bit more on the Burr side. But for me, this was a deal breaker. The fact that they were only willing to come down to 140 for this particular property, and that's sometimes what happens on the MLS, right? Because the seller is not in a dire situation. They don't have enough distress to make them drop down that much. So we did kind of a casual offer just to our realtor just to see if they were even interested. But because of my concerns, because of the risk factors, because of the unknowns, because of the flat roof and the purchase price, for me, this was not a deal. So we did not do a deal on this. We were not able to reach an agreement, and that's okay, right? So as you look at this thing, I would definitely encourage you when you're buying to stick to your criteria, right? Stick to your criteria. For me, I have very specific criteria in place. And for me, I think that's important because it helps me to recognize what to say yes to and what to say no to. Because the thing you must realize is that no deal is better than a bad deal. And sometimes, especially if you're a newbie or just getting started out, you really want that first deal. You want to get it under your belt, but you got to realize that if you make a bad deal right out of the gate and you spent money that you've saved up for a long time, those kind of things can be life stressors. They can be things that can put you out of the game completely because you've had such a bad experience. You've created such a pain point in your life, right, that you don't even want to touch real estate anymore. So I think that that's important, that no deal is better than a bad deal. It's better to walk away. And this is what I did in a situation, was I walked away. The other thing is minimize your risk, right? So I mentioned a lot of concerns. So to me, every concern I have is a level of risk. So for me, there was not, as I looked at risk versus reward, there just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to make it worth my while. And the seller in this situation was not motivated enough to want to do the deal. Other thing is, don't get emotionally attached. Don't get, the more you see a deal, especially if you're trying to get that first deal, you're trying to grow, you're trying to scale, you can get emotionally attached. If time has gone by, you were like, okay, in January I was going to have a deal, or right now, we're in October. In October I was supposed to have a deal. I set a goal and I was going to have a deal by October, and this is going to have to be it, right? No deal is better than a bad deal, right? So, but don't get yourself emotionally attached. I was really excited when I saw that detached garage. I was like, man, that would be so cool to turn that into an apartment and generate more cash flow out of it and see something that nobody else could see. Because I haven't done a project like that before. I have not done a detached garage. So, and I started to feel myself like, well, maybe this, maybe that, we can maybe make it work. And I was even talking to a cash partner of mine, who we talked through different deals together and have done a little bit of JV stuff together. And I was running a deal by him. I was like, I don't see it. And he's like, yeah, I don't see it either. And it's really good. It helped me to kind of run it by somebody else just to kind of check that emotion meter to make sure that I was not getting emotionally attached. Because when you get emotionally attached, you start throwing logic out of the window and you start making decisions that are just based on emotion, and that's when you make a bad one. So I would encourage you guys, just to follow some of those guidelines. But I wanted to just kind of throw a deal together with you that I actually walked away from and show you why, right? And as you look at it, your criteria will tell you what you can afford to buy. It'll tell you what you can afford to do to meet your specific goals. So I hope this video has been beneficial to you as we walk through this deal. If you got questions for me, make sure you drop them in the comment section. Also, as always, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Share this with somebody who needs to hear it, who's struggling or just on their journey, right? Who's got different questions. I hope this has been beneficial to you. I hope it's advantageous to you during your journey. If you got questions, like I said, make sure you drop them in the comment section. We'll get back to you. We'll get them answered for you. I'm here to help you guys, praying for you. Stay safe out there. God bless you and your family, and I cannot wait to see you again when we bring you more amazing content to help you in your business. This has been Marseille, aka the Property Pastor. That's all we have for you today. Love you so much. God bless, and take care.